It's great to be here. Thank you for your welcome. These events are always great. There's the proverbial preaching to the choir moment when you get a bunch of people come out and already care about faith and work. And my hope today is that I will only endeavor to speak about what God has done through me and my life, and I'll share with you some of the mistakes we've made over time and some of the things that hopefully will be an encouragement for you as you get back out. You know, right now you're among friends and you're among peers, and your table conversations have been rich. My hope is that you will in turn have conversations like the ones you had today at your workplace, and that God's kingdom will come about here in LA like it is in other places. And it will happen, as our speakers this morning talked about, it will happen where we are in the marketplace. Now, one of the things that I wanted to circle back on, there's so much that Paul said, and with art too, but I want to focus on something that Paul said that I think needs to be addressed. So many rich things that came out of that I think really are resonant for the faith-driven entrepreneur, which is a group of people that I care deeply about. We're launching a new website next Tuesday, this Tuesday actually, called thefaithdrivenentrepreneur.org, believing that entrepreneurs who are driven by their Christian faith have a special opportunity to transform the cultures that they're in through the way they love on their partners and their vendors and their customers and their employees. And I got a lot of great material from Paul's talk, but he got one thing wrong, I think. One thing I think he got wrong was that when we are in heaven, I think his directions were right. I think it is gold, then platinum, and then silver. But when you come to the second mansion on the left, I don't think it's Starbucks. I think it's these guys at Demitasse. That's what I think. And I think that he was betraying his Pacific Northwest ties, but we know that there's better coffee in heaven than Starbucks coffee, right? Amen? All right, good. What I want to do is I want to go briefly through my background and my history, and again, talk about how God has worked at Bandwidth, and then also the lessons that we have learned as we've invested now in 38 Christian-led companies over the course of the last 6 years as we endeavor to have a venture capital fund that comes alongside faith-driven entrepreneurs. My personal background, real quickly, I grew up in a nominally Christian house. We went to a church every Sunday, but I never heard the gospel. Jesus and what he meant for my life meant nothing practically in my life at all. I was focused and driven, and we had a neat table conversation with Paul about the difference between being called and driven. I had been driven. I discovered my first love when I was at college. And it was not the girl that I married. And it wasn't a girl. It was the fact that I could make t-shirts for $5 and sell them for $10. And there was a guy, Francis, around here somewhere who is a math whiz. That's about as basic math as I've ever been able to do. Make something for $5, sell it for $10. I can do that. And I sold t-shirts and then had sales teams. And by the time I got out of school, we had sales teams and functions of one form or fashion at 50 different colleges. And we were the ones that, if you got those really cheesy college shirts that had the Simpsons on them or Calvin and Hobbes, that was partially us. You have me to blame for that. I had some problems with copyright infringements, as you might imagine. And so that was the end of my first entrepreneurial career. I needed to get a real job. My father said, you can plead naivete, as I did, when you're 20, but you can't when you're 21. You need to get a real job. And so right then, the movie Wall Street had come out. You guys remember the first Wall Street? So Michael Douglas, Charlie Sheen, Bud Fox, Gordon Gekko, and I so badly wanted to be Bud Fox, which is really, really sad. When your first life role model is Charlie Sheen, you know you're in trouble. But I wanted to have the two phones up, and I wanted to have Daryl Hannah as a girlfriend. I wanted the apartment on the Upper West Side with the exposed brick wall. I wanted a sushi machine, and my life was going to be set to really cool Frank Sinatra songs. It was going to be awesome. And that was going to deliver me true happiness. And I got to New York, and I actually got all those things, including the exposed brick wall. And as you might imagine, because it's probably happened to some degree or fashion in your life, that did not deliver happiness. I had, as so many as you have had in your past, a God-shaped hole, and I didn't know it. I did, over the process of living in New York and working on Wall Street, meet my beautiful then girlfriend, fiance, and wife, and mother of my 3 kids. We moved to North Carolina, much longer story, which I won't go into, but to set up this company that was mentioned briefly. And in the process of moving to North Carolina, Kimberly and I both said, you know what? We probably should join a church. It's where nice, moral, social people hang out. We should probably do that. And we both had grown up in those types of environments. And we walked in one day to a church that seemed innocuous enough. It was a Presbyterian church. I grew up Presbyterian. I thought that was going to be safe. But the pastor clearly believed that the Bible was true. And I had no space in my mind for how a confident, articulate, intelligent person could actually believe that the Bible was true. And I endeavored to read Scripture. And at first I got the Bible out. I had no idea how many pages were in it. There are a lot of pages in the Bible. But I saw the part in the back, the New Testament, and I said, aha, this is like the Cliff Notes to the Bible. I got through prep school by reading the Cliff Notes of all the classics. And so I thought, this is going to help me to understand it all. And the first time going through it, it actually took me further away from faith. Because the faith that we have all ascribed to has an exclusivity to it that can be offensive to somebody new to the faith. And it was offensive to me. But as in reading through it a second time, that through God's Holy Spirit, I came to understand that it was true. If it was true, it changed everything, and it did. Ended up selling that first company, started a company called Bandwidth. Our founding values, as was mentioned in the introduction, faith first, family, work, and fitness. I'm going to take them in reverse order. I should also preface it by saying that this is 2000. This is a time where the dot-com explosion was happening. It was when everything was all about corporate culture, and it was the bringing in, you stopped wearing suits to work, and you started having ping pong tables, and I too wanted to be intentional about corporate culture. My best friend and business partner had been a lifelong believer, and so we said, if we're going to have a culture, it needs to have integrity to it. It needs to mirror who we want to be as individuals. And since we're starting up this business, it can be anything we want. So faith first and family, work, and fitness. David is a world-class endurance athlete. I'm a neighborhood class endurance athlete, and I live in a very small neighborhood. But I also like to work out at lunch. So we have just about 800 employees between Bandwidth and Republic Wireless, and 2/3 of them work out at lunchtime. We have champion basketball team. We won the citywide ice hockey championship. We finished second in the mountain biking race, the Trans Rockies mountain bike race. We won the Race Across America, which is an endurance race, a 4-person team across the United States. We're really serious about fitness. It's part of who we are. The next thing that's more important than fitness is work. When we work, we feel God's pleasure. And it's something that we believe that we were designed to do. Work, however, is not as important as family. We have lots of young families in our company that have a unique opportunity to go home and love on their families at 6 o'clock and be there for dinner time and bath time, story time, bedtime. All of those things are really, really important. If you're doing the math by now, you're saying, wait a second, so they work out for an hour and a half every day at lunch, and then they leave at 6 o'clock. How can they compete and win in this telecom world? And also, just a quick word on Bandwidth and Republic Wireless. Republic Wireless is a cell phone company. We invented a technology that allows your cell phone call to go over both Wi-Fi and the cell phone backhaul network at the same time, packet by packet, to optimize them, which means that we get to save our customers money on that. We've invented a new product called Relay, which is, imagine a walkie-talkie marrying a cell phone, coming together, where if you're a young parent and you've got kids between the ages of, say, 5 and 12, and you want them to have a cell phone, but you want to get in touch with them, that's the Relay device. Really, really cheap. They can be out playing, a mile or two away at a play date or something like that, but you can always get them. And it's a cheap enough device so that if the kid loses it, you can get it. You can easily get another one. That's what Republic Wireless does. The second company is called Bandwidth, and at Bandwidth, we provide telecom origination. So we provide the phone numbers and the service for companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Google and Vonage and Skype. We have about 60 million phone numbers that are in service in America. And so it's kind of a behind-the-scenes type of thing. But that's what the company does. And we'd like to think we do it really, really well. That's work for us. We want to be in this competitive telecom world and do well. So we get back in and we do our work at 8:30 or 9 o'clock after we put kids to bed. But one night that we don't do that is Wednesday night, which traditionally for David and I had been date night. We don't, of course, mandate date night being Wednesday night across all our employees. But I'll tell you, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, it is incredibly important to model the behavior that you'd like to see your employees have. We heard that before in Korea. Was it just at our table group or maybe up here on the stage talking about the guy from Samsung falling asleep at a desk? The modeling you do as an entrepreneur is incredibly important. So everybody at Bandwidth and Republic and now Sovereign's Capital knows that date night is a big deal. And so that's one night a week where I can go out and I can tell Kimberly that she indeed is more important than my work. Then of course faith is the most important thing for us. We don't have fish on our business card, and we don't do healing ceremonies on Tuesdays. We do them on Wednesdays. We don't have healing ceremonies at Bandwidth, but it's impossible to spend any meaningful time with us and not understand why we do what we do. And we want to be very intentional about that. And I think that's something that as Christ followers we've lost along the way. And there's a lot of really good secular research that speaks to how important this is. So Simon Sinek, of course, has got an incredible TED.com video which talks about the why of leadership. You see it in Jim Collins' work, Level 5 Leader. It's in Clayton Christensen's work, talking about how when a leader can articulate why they do what they do, that those in their organization will follow them. Very important. Harvard Business School came down to do a case study on Bandwidth 3 or 4 years ago, and one of the things that through our work together they came to understand is that we have been able to compete and win because of our employee retention. And our employee retention, we believe, comes from the fact we talk about why we do what we do. And that resonates even with our non-believing employees. We've always endeavored not to have a holy huddle. We've always endeavored to hire the best person for the job. But I firmly believe that as David and I can talk about our faith and how we seek to honor God, that the part in them, which is all of them, that was created in God's image, resonates with that. Some of them know that instantaneously and identify with it, and many other ones don't. But if you want to understand the physiology behind it, watch that Simon Sinek video, and you'll come to understand it more. And I think that this is something that's really, really important, and we've seen this play out in our portfolio. If you can't articulate why you do what you do as a Christ follower in the marketplace, and to do it with gentleness and respect through relationship, if you cannot do that, you are at an inherent disadvantage to the secular entrepreneur that can talk with great fluency and articulation about why they want to do what they do. Maybe they say, I want to put shoes on kids' feet in Africa, and that's why I do what I do. Or I want to save the environment. Or I want to go ahead at Whole Foods. John Mackey wants to go ahead and completely change the way that food is procured. He can talk with that with an integrity and a passion that resonates with his employees that want to be about something greater than the manufacture and distribution of widgets. If you as a Christ follower, in your soul, in your being, love the Lord, and that is the most important thing about who you are, and you do not ever talk about that, there's not an integrity to your leadership. And your employees will be able to sniff that out over time. Really important. I think that so many Christ-following entrepreneurs miss this opportunity, and I'm going to get to that here in a second. Okay, Sovereign's Capital. And this is the red. This thing is blinking red. Or the just top is. Okay, I'm not out of time. Great. Okay, Sovereign's Capital. Here's the story of Sovereign's Capital. And I want to talk to you about a couple of the stories that I've learned. We were about 2.5 years in. First year in business, by the way, we had 25 employees and did $64,000 in revenue. That is not sustainable. Second year, slightly better. 30 employees, $274,000 in revenue. Also not sustainable. We spent through all the money I'd had from our prior exit, and we went, as so many good entrepreneurs would do, we went out to Sand Hill Road and went up and down looking for money. We would not talk about faith on our first visit, but we would when it came around to being having a site visit. We knew that we were going to be bringing somebody on board in the cap table who would be partners with us. They'd be strapped to the mast. They'd have real skin in the game. Too many metaphors, but you're following me. And we wanted to make sure that they understood what drove us. And we said, look, it ain't going to be a holy huddle, and we're going to hire the best person for the job, but we might do wacky things like pray before board meetings. You should probably know that. We went 0 for 40 in raises. And we got a lot of blank stares. And I think really in a best case scenario, we were misunderstood. In a worst case scenario, I think we were prejudiced against. It was a long, hard, challenging time for us. On another talk, I talked about some of the lessons we learned at Bandwidth. And David and I had done some reflection recently. We had a really neat milestone that we hit with the company, and it gave us an opportunity to reflect. And we look back on it and we said, the times where we made mistakes at Bandwidth were times where we were being willful rather than faithful. And my life can pretty much be divided into two camps. Times when I was being willful and times when I was being faithful. And as we started riffing on it, we came up with all these different biblical illustrations that kind of illustrated the points. You got Saul, who's supposed to wait on Samuel before he goes off, but he willfully went off into battle. Versus Gideon, who waited on the Lord. He laid out the fleeces, but he waited on the Lord. God bless that. You can also, by the way, be willful in passivity when you're at a company. David did that. Kings go off to war. He stayed behind. So we found, through our experience, we found out, of course, that Christian-led businesses can compete and win, and two, the investment world doesn't know what to make of that. And so we endeavored to start this venture fund called Sovereign's Capital, where we invest in faith-driven entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia and the United States. And we've seen some things that I want to impart on you in the last 5 minutes that I've got. One is that almost all of our companies and their leaders are characterized by having levels of anxiety. Anxiety, as we've come to experience, it betrays a false sense of identity. And it's really challenging for those of you that are entrepreneurs. You're growing at 20% month over month, and everybody loves you. You got an article in the paper, and your mother's bridge partner calls up and says, I saw Johnny in the newspaper. She calls you up and says, I'm so proud of you. Or you just closed a deal with Google, or you just closed a funding round. And everybody's like, congratulations. Insidiously, little by little, that becomes your identity. I'm the entrepreneur. I'm the entrepreneur that runs this company, and I've had this type of success. Until all of a sudden, you're not growing at that rate. Because nobody grows at 20% month over month forever. And there can be a real anxiety in all of our lives, whether we're an entrepreneur or not, but we see it a lot in entrepreneurship. And it betrays a sense that they don't understand that at their root, they are a beloved child of God, and God doesn't need them to be successful. God just wants them. One of the things we try to do with all of our portfolio companies is to sit down with them twice a year and to talk to them about matters of spiritual integration. 95% of the time we're talking about customer acquisition and intellectual property and channels to market and things like that. But twice a year we sit down and we talk to them about their spiritual integration. How are they doing in their relationship with God? Are they a member of a small group? How do they think about the biblical message of generosity? Are they a leader in their local faith and work movement? Where is their identity? Have they steeped in the concept, in the fact that the author of the universe, with whom we'll be forever, loves us so much that he gave his only son? And do they then, once they've steeped in it and realized it and came to understand that God does not need them to be successful, because that's what plagues so many entrepreneurs, we end up finding ourselves doing God's work. We're doing God's work. And we miss an opportunity to allow God to work through us. Signs of that, we're not celebrating Sabbath. Signs of that, we have an anxiety issue. It is only when a Christ follower can go ahead and realize the fact that we were loved from the beginning of time forever, that we then come to the altar with everything we have, all of our entrepreneurial gifts, all of our work gifts, all of our talents, and we bring it to the altar as our meaningful form of worship, not because God needs us to be successful or our money. I used to think God needed my money, but he took 5 loaves and 2 fish and fed 5,000. He does not need my money. He just wants my heart. It is only then that we have an opportunity to be an effective witness. And we have an opportunity as a class from going through what the rest of the world thinks is mediocrity because we don't have an integrity in what we do. We're Christians, we're trying to be entrepreneurs, but we don't have really integration in that. To come to this sense, and that's a lifestyle characterized by lack of integrity, anxiety, where the secular people don't have that problem. We can go ahead and pass through that only when we come to understand their identity as a beloved child of God, and that our work is a meaningful form of worship. And then we get a sense of joy, and that joy is contagious. So we operate all of Google's voice network. And we do all the work for Microsoft on voice. We do work with some big customers. When our network goes down, you get a call on the red line, and it's not a happy call. One of the things that allows David to be able to most effectively witness is because he's able to respond to those calls when our network goes down or has issues with urgency because the opportunity calls for it, but without stress. Because his identity is not as the CEO of Bandwidth. His identity is as a beloved child of God. And it is then that he has the greatest opportunity to be a great witness and testimony. When a new employee comes to Bandwidth, he'll talk about its faith and the faith story. That's not what gets them. It's when they say, he's got something different. He has a joy at work that I want. My hope and prayer is that we'll all get that. And that you'll be vigilant for that among your friends as you get together in these small groups. Look for challenges with identity. Look for challenges with anxiety. And that's all I got for you. We're going to do a Q&A. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be here with you. And psyched that you're all here. Thank you.